right. Hi, everyone. This is Brett Fisher with Fisher Search Group. We're medical device sales recruiters, and I am joined by, I'm so excited today. I'm being joined by one of my colleagues in my network from the HR space. So this is episode 2 of the Fisher Search Group podcast. We're off and running here in 2024. I will wait no further, but to share, Aliza Litke is the owner of the consulting firm 3E Compass Solutions, which specializes in HR consulting and executive strengths coaching. Prior to consulting, she worked as an HR director for Target and Marriott before focusing her scope on engagement, talent and culture, and people development. Please put your hands together and welcome Aliza to the podcast. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I realize it's not just a podcast. We also have a video. It's like a video blog, video podcast as well. So thank you for joining me. I'm excited to share you with my network, and I'm excited to join your network. And so we've been brainstorming the idea for this podcast for, I don't know, about a month or so. And what we came up with was just difficult conversations in recruiting.
Yes.
And so I thought this would be great to kind of pick your brain a little bit about the conversations we have to have, because they're kind of like the honest conversations, which ultimately provide growth. But we hope to demystify some of these conversations, and we'll jump to that in a second. But before we do, I would love to just turn the stage over to you just for a moment, give a quick introduction, and then I'd love to hear really your perspective on what you're seeing in the market today, really from an HR perspective, and any trends you're seeing, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, so outside of that wonderful introduction, thank you. I am a mom of 3 small children. And so, as you know, kind of having your own business in the world with 3 children is not always easy, but It's so rewarding. The work that we do is so rewarding, and that's why we do it. And so, being your own business owner, I think challenges you to make sure that you're kind of staying ahead of what's going on in the market and across different companies. And so, I feel like there's been a shift in the last, I would say 6 months, maybe 6 to 9 months in the job market. 2022, much of 2023 was very, even post-COVID, right? Since things ramped back up in 2021 even. So things really turned to kind of a candidate's market. So it was almost like as a candidate, you had kind of like your pick of the litter, right? You could interview for 5 different roles, probably get offered every single one. And then it was up to you to decide which one you wanted. And I don't know, I'm starting in the past 6 to 9 months, maybe seeing that it's maybe not that way as much anymore. It's getting a little more competitive. There are definitely times where you can come down to being a finalist, and it's not maybe you have your pick of 5 different roles anymore. It's kind of you're fighting for every single one. And so
it's tough right now.
Yeah, it can be really tough. And so I've definitely felt that, but excited about what that means in terms of really being able to level up as a candidate and figure out like, what is that real value that I bring, and what is it that I'm passionate about, where I can align that to the organization. Yeah.
That's awesome. The word I'm going to pick out is level up, because now not only is there's the competition you're talking about, whereas before there was such a candidates market, even the salaries were like just tremendous. But now we have to really overemphasize this, play up our value, the value that we're bringing, right? Because employers are being very picky, and level up is really important. So I think that plays in really nicely to our topic, difficult conversations in recruitment, how we can help candidates level up and prepare themselves for this market that we're in. We don't know how long it's going to go on for. We do know that everything is cyclical. It goes up, it goes down. We've seen this before. And so really, as candidates are interviewing, they're going to go through a process. Maybe they'll make it to the final round. And then at the end of the day, there's only one winner, right? Yeah. So, and then they get that dreaded, what if they're not selected, why? They want to know what can they do differently. Obviously, we always want to provide them with some good, honest feedback. But one of the common answers they hear really has to do around fit.
Yes.
This elusive word fit. You're not the right fit. So
Mm-hmm.
can you please help demystify that for us a little bit? What that means and how we can sort of interpret that, and where do we go with that information?
Yeah, that's such a great point, right? I think that's one of the default responses a lot of times, and not because there's not truth to it. It just it's a matching process, right? I hate to use the analogy that it's kind of like a relationship, but it kind of is, right?
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you have to figure out, as much as the organization is trying to find out if you as a candidate are the right fit for them, you as the candidate have to figure out, like, is this company the right fit for me? And so
Mm.
I think there's a lot of value in taking the time to ask those questions. And kind of just like in a relationship, if you would start seeing red flags as a candidate, if you start seeing red flags or things that don't align well with you, call it out early in the process, because the further you go down the path and maybe you don't have the answers, or maybe there's some uncertainty around, like, oh, am I going to settle for this? It's only going to cause more difficulty the further down you
Mm.
go. And so there's a lot of value in just figuring that out early and figuring out if the two of you are a good match, the organization and the candidate. Yeah.
So you brought up a point which I wasn't even considering, but it's really important for our audience to think about this. When I just prompted you with the word fit, I was
Mhm.
thinking like it was just one way. It was the organization saying you're not the right fit. And when I think about fit, it's not just the matching of the job description; it's matching the culture, matching your
Yes.
place on the team, really fit of where you come in the life cycle of your career, like fitting in, like could this be a good move for you in terms of growth? But
Mhm.
then you just took it to, it's got to be a fit for them too, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of candidates go in thinking like, I got to get this, I got to get this, I got to get this, without maybe even
Mhm.
thinking about, well, I don't know if I want to get this at the end of the day, because I'm learning things that may be yellow flags. And so I'm so
Mhm.
glad you brought up that dating analogy, because we often reference the dating analogy. You got to go on a lot of dates to see what you like and you don't like.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a whole nother story. But thank you for bringing up fit both ways. So for our candidates, please make a list, really of your ideal employer, not just the job, but the size of the company, the mission behind it. Obviously, compensation matters, but thank you for that. That perspective is really good. Do you want to say anything else around fit as an HR professional? What you
Yeah.
can say, but there are so many dimensions to fit that one should not take it personally when they
Yes.
hear that. But ideally, I think it's a good indicator that they somehow see at the finish line, it's probably not going to be a heck yeah, and they're just trying to obviously make it the best for both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great point, right? When they go down the path, when a candidate is looking for this role, there is so much to consider. And when you think about just kind of like the knowledge, skills, and abilities, you are probably prepared or qualified for hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs that are open around the country right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that fit piece is kind of like the intangible that you can't, it's harder to define, right? So you're going through the process and you figure out, like, do we mesh? I, I will say, when you feel like it's right and it's really right, that's probably the path that you want to go down. And sometimes you don't even really know that until you do find the right thing, right? You can go down like 5 or 6 paths and you're like, oh, this is good. Everything's good. But then when it's great, you're like, yes, this is what it's supposed to be like. And this is like, I want to be excited for it. And I know it's important to find a role, and especially if you're in a situation where you need to, for financial or other reasons, find it quickly, jump in.
Mm.
However,
Mm.
I would encourage you to kind of hold out for that it's great feeling, because if you're feeling that, it's likely that the company is probably feeling it on the other side as well.
That's wonderful. I love that. When I reflect on our candidates who make it to the finish line and they get their offer,
Mhm.
and I think about the process, it's pretty frictionless
Yes.
and organic.
Hmm.
And there's not like, oh, well, can you give us more metrics around this? And oh, can we get an extra reference? Oh,
Yeah.
like it's just frictionless, and it happens very, like a relationship that's meant to be. It applies the same here. So that's a really good point. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think that's it on that thought, unless you have any other thoughts
yeah.
around fit.
No, the last thing, I will say as an HR professional, I try to dedicate half of my interview time to the candidate for asking
Mm.
questions around culture and fit. So don't be afraid to like really dig in and ask some hard questions. I would much rather someone take up half of our interview time on their questions than feel like they have to ask these like forced one or two questions. So just as kind of a tip, as you're going out there and meeting with companies, please feel free, like whether it's HR or someone else in the process, like dig in and just bring everything you've got so that you feel comfortable walking out that this is the right decision for you.
That's a great perspective, and it reminded me of one point to feel okay to open up about who you really are, because at the end of the day they want to know who you really are,
Mhm.
not just at work but outside of work. I mean, I'm seeing things on your wall behind you,
Yeah.
you see things behind me, you can kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, that's really interesting, like what are you into? I think a lot of candidates feel they need to give some very polished interview answers,
Mhm.
which is important, right? You need
Yes.
to sell your value,
Yes.
but also weave in a little bit of the personal, like you mentioned. You're a mother of three. I'm a mother of. I'm a father of three. I'm a parent. We're both parents
Yeah.
of three. Um, but they want to know who you really are.
Yes.
Like they want to know behind those interview answers is a real person who's really genuine, and they want to know who they're going to be working with.
Yeah.
So. Do feel comfortable opening up a little bit to really get your authentic side out, and I think they'll go a long way.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, some good stuff there to share with everyone. Just to recap, today we're talking about difficult conversations in recruitment. I'm joined by Aliza Litke, an HR professional. We have a mutual client that we work with.
Mhm.
I've known you for a couple of years
Yeah.
now, and difficult conversations is the topic. Our second key point, the first one was around fit. The second one is letting candidates know that they didn't get the job, which
Mhm.
you're not the right fit, maybe one of those answers.
Yeah.
And now we know what that could be. It could be a variety of different things. But the difficult conversation stems around getting feedback, and what that feedback is, when to ask for feedback, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, so they can help level themselves up. Another theme that came up
Mhm.
for their next interview. So why don't you take it away? Tell me your thoughts there.
Yeah, thank you. So I will say I am, being a kind of people development person, I love to be able to give candidates feedback if they are looking for it from a very genuine place. There's sometimes people come to you and it's almost more of like a defensive, like, why didn't I get it? And they want to argue why they should. I understand there are a lot of emotions attached to this whole process, right? But I think when you come at it from the lens of like, okay, I've accepted that I haven't, and I want to just make sure that I am constantly improving and maybe I can be better prepared in a different way in the future and things like that. When someone presents a feedback request in that way, I will give them everything I have to make sure that they are set up for success for the next role or interview. Because again, they were probably, if they made it that far in the interview process, they were probably a fantastic candidate. And it
Mm,
probably came down to the wire. And so, whether it's fit or something else, there's just maybe one or two pieces missing that they can share or change or improve upon, or maybe a better fit for a different organization. So, I'm always happy to do that. Where I will say just kind of caution, and I've seen this a couple times only in the last few years. Early in my career, I didn't see it much, but I'll have candidates kind of like going above and reaching out to like very high ranking, like senior leaders
mm,
in the organizations
mm.
and trying to like make a case. Like they have not even met with this person and they'll say, so and so I met with XYZ and, I was told that I wasn't the right fit, but I'd really like to meet with you and share all the reasons why I am or
Wow.
something. And so I would say in that scenario, again, emotionally charged and completely understand, but that is not probably going to get you where you want to go in the next
Mm,
step. And so asking for feedback is
agreed.
fine, but yeah, just kind of being aware of how you're asking for it is important.
that's sort of like the blind appeal,
Yes.
and maybe that person doesn't have quite the emotional awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, good for them for obviously seeking the feedback. You just got to
Yeah.
make sure you do it in the right channel, in the right way.
Mhm.
So us as a third party recruiter, we typically, or me, I'm usually the one who gives the gives the feedback. I try to be as honest as
Mhm.
possible without compromising confidentiality, or I want to protect our clients. They're the ones who are seeking a candidate. But where I feel it's appropriate, I try to be as honest as possible. We're looking for this specific therapeutic experience, this call point experience, having launched this specific product. They want to know that the candidate has done it specifically. And some candidates do have that, but then you have a slew of other candidates who haven't done that specific
Yeah.
activity, or accomplishment, because it's such a short supply market. We're trying to see if maybe those secondary candidates could fit into our role.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, we tried,
Yeah.
and it didn't work out. Right. So ideally, our clients are still holding out for that particular attribute.
Mhm.
And I'll just be honest. And then other times, when we have to protect protect things that we'll come up with something.
Yeah.
But where possible, we definitely want to give really honest feedback so that they can improve,
Mhm.
and then go on and win the next time. The one thought that I will share is I always try to tell candidates that this one was, for whatever reason, was not meant to be.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know what, maybe it wasn't meant to be. Okay, that feels a little bit better, but I'm confident that there's something out there that's better for you. We don't know what it is yet, but it could show up tomorrow or next week. There's another opportunity out there that's it's more in alignment for what you're looking for, and you're gonna get it. But this one, for whatever it was, just wasn't meant to be. So
Yeah.
don't take it personally. Just keep going.
Exactly. Yeah. If you don't mind, if I'll share a personal story, so my
Yeah.
dad was also, he's a small business owner later in his career, but early in his career, had to let go of a very good friend of his. And, he said it was one of the hardest things he ever did in his career. And he let him go, turned around, walked into his boss's office and quit because he didn't believe it was the right thing to do, but that was the ask of him as a leader. And so,
Wow.
yeah, crazy. And what is the reason I tell this story, to your point about, the right one will come along for you. My dad saw this man in a restaurant about 35 years after this happened. And the guy walked up to my dad in this restaurant and shook his hand, and he said, Pat, I just got to tell you, that's the best thing that ever happened to me, because I wasn't happy there. It wasn't like
Mm,
I wasn't fulfilled there. And that moment caused me to figure out what I was genuinely passionate about. And,
wow.
now I've spent the last 35 years doing work that I love, all because of that moment. And so just kind of keep in mind that closed doors closed for a reason, and the right ones will open up, and maybe there's a little reevaluation, but it happens for a reason. So it could be the best thing that ever happened to you.
In this case, and in many cases, it is. I mean, your dad released him from something he didn't know the candidate was uncomfortable in.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went on to something a lot more meaningful that was really meant to be. So you
Mm-hmm.
kind of have to trust the universe, trust, that there's a plan, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all going to work out. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
all right, great. That's a great recap of letting candidates know they didn't get the job. So real fast, we're going to jump into our last point, which is finding ways to get to yes. We're joined by Aliza Litke, my colleague in the HR space. We're talking about difficult conversations in recruitment, finding ways to get to yes, or at least closer, as you say. We are in a short supply market. There's not too many people out there who can do exactly what our employer clients are looking for. So how might we take someone who's already really talented,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't fit exactly a 10 out of 10? How can we get creative to get to yes, and make a placement, or fill a job vacancy? How can we make that happen with some creativity? Take it away.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, companies are looking for top talent. And if you are the person that this company is ready to make an offer to, or, even if you're getting kind of to the final stages of the interview process, that means that they see a lot of talent in you. And so knowing that they want to retain top talent. Sometimes you have a little bit of leeway in figuring out how to make it work for both of you. And I'll give you an example. So like let's say travel, right? So let's say a job description or a role is written in at 50% travel. And you as the candidate are like, oh my gosh, I love this role. I love this company. Everything seems like it's going really well. It seems like the company loves me. And you get to that piece and you're like a little bit stuck on it, right? You're like, 50% is a lot. And, you know, historically, a lot of people will just bite the bullet and they'll say, oh, I'll just do it and it'll be fine. And then you get 6 months in, a year in, 18 months in, and you're like, I can't do it. I'm burnt out. The travel's not for me. And really you knew all along, probably somewhere in your
Oh,
gut, that like, that was a lot. It's okay to ask up front and just let the company know where you're at and just kind of say like, I'm really excited about this opportunity. I think I can bring a lot of value for XYZ reasons, but I'm probably much more comfortable with like 30% travel. Is there any way that we can make that work? And, you know, I promise I'm giving 100%. These are the reasons why, or something like that. You know, that transparency and just letting the company know where you're at. Unless there is like a very specific reason that you have to be out or on the road for X number of days, like as a role requirement, I cannot think of many companies who would say like, absolutely not. It has to be exactly 50%, you know? So there are a lot of leaders and people who will work with you and flex with you as you need throughout your career and throughout the process. So just if there's something that's kind of not sitting right, maybe it's hybrid work, maybe it's relocation, maybe it is travel, just bring it up and see how you guys can get creative together to figure out what will work for the company and what will work for you.
I love it. So, are you saying that? Well, obviously, there must have been some examples where this happened, where they just can't. They didn't feel comfortable to bring these things up. They
Yeah.
joined,
Mm-hmm.
and then they sort of powered through it. It's like the rubber band that gets stretched,
Yeah.
and then they snapped at some point. Like, I just can't do this 50% travel. It's okay to bring it up, obviously, in the interview process.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Because you don't want to accept the job and feel like, you know, I can do it, but I'm stretching myself right off the bat, right? And there's signs of it along the way for you as the candidate and for the company. You know, you start to see like moments of disengagement or moments of burnout. And that's not what
Mm,
anyone wants ultimately at the end of the day.
no,
People
right.
hire candidates to be high performers and they want to put you in roles where you're set up for success and you're adding value and contributing. So if it's a deal breaker, but everything else is perfect, there's just this one thing, definitely, yeah, bring it up in the process to someone who can help brainstorm with you on how to make it work.
So it sounds like kind of easy, like I'll just bring it up, but I think your point is for some people it is a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
It's maybe not something they're used to asking for. It could be
Mhm.
cultural, it could be just a part of their personality. They feel uncomfortable, fully self-advocating, but it's what you're saying is it's okay. Push yourself to really put everything on the table, in all aspects of the role, the negotiation, the salary, workplace, travel. Just put everything out there and be very clear with yourself what you're willing to tolerate and accept versus it would just be a little bit uncomfortable, and you don't want to waste anyone's time down the road
Yes.
and then get some sort of burnout, and then like the employer is back to square one and needing to find a replacement if it didn't work out.
Exactly. Yeah. I've seen people start and within a couple weeks quit because of travel requirements or office requirements. And it's like you didn't even try it that long. So you knew somewhere that that was probably not going to work for you. And that's okay. It happens. But depending on some of the industries you're in, it can be a very small world. I'll tell you right now, I worked in hospitality for the better part of 8 or 9 years. And
Mm.
I you would think hospitality is huge, right? You would think that all of these hotels across the country and restaurants and things. And I cannot tell you how many times I continuously to this day cross paths with people I've worked with in the hospitality industry. And so the reason I say that is because depending on your industry, if that happens and word of that happening gets out, it's worse than just asking up front and finding a company that
Right.
made more sense for you. Yeah.
Right. Right. So many good little gems here that you're sharing, and I'm hoping our audience has some good takeaways, because these are. I always say, like in the I'm sure someone else said it. The discomfort, that's where the growth is. So if you can push yourself to seek the right feedback, so you can level up and really be authentic and open up about what your needs truly are, we're all going to benefit in the end. And to that last point of opening up, do you find are there ways when you interview candidates to create a really comfortable environment or a safe environment where they do feel comfortable opening up, as opposed to just spitting out those rehearsed interview answers, and you can really
Yeah.
get to know who they really are, and really that 50% travel is kind of a deal breaker? Like how do you get people comfortable to open up?
That's a great question. Yeah. And I think every interviewer is different. But for me, I like to spend the first chunk of time during introductions sharing a little bit about me too. I feel like sometimes you walk into interviews and they're just like, okay, tell me about yourself. And so I open up by saying, like, I'd love for us to do introductions. I'm going to share a little bit about me, and I'd love to hear more about you and whatever, XYZ. And so when I give my little portion, I always share a couple personal things that just help take the walls down. So that way they can be like, oh, it's a real human, So it's not just like, this is my title and this is my, my resume. It's kind of just like, this is who I am as a person, and, what I've really loved or not, whatever it might be, depending on the situation. And then usually that helps bring walls down, because it's like, okay, I'm not being grilled. It's more conversational a little bit.
I love that. Because then we can just get to what we all want at the end of the day much more quicker, and everyone's time saved. So good. Just to recap, we are talking about difficult conversations in recruitment. I'm joined by my guest, Aliza Litke. This is my second episode, Fisher Search Group podcast. Before we go, we have a couple minutes left. Unfortunately, we don't have a live audience to ask questions. I'm sure there's a ton of questions. So when people see this, please comment in the posting, and obviously we'll be happy to answer questions. But is there anything you'd like to leave with us today? Any final thoughts about difficult conversations in recruitment? It's been so great having you, and we've obviously not done this, so I'd love to keep the conversation going, but please, anything you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I have enjoyed this and enjoyed having some of these conversations, because I think it's so important. I'll just leave you with the job market, these companies, these industries, they can't become the successful companies they are and teams that they are without high performing candidates. So don't underestimate your value and what you can bring to the company. They need something, right? And that's why they're looking for you. So, don't ever think about walking into an interview as if you're on kind of your back foot. Step in with confidence and just share that value, and the right company will see the value that you bring for them. And that's what's most important at the end of the day. That's where people build careers. So, yeah.
Awesome. And that's what we're here to do. We're
That's
here
right.
to help people change their lives and get to a better place. That gives us satisfaction.
Yes.
Because you know what? You spend most of your waking hours working, for those of us in careers and stuff. So it should be as, pleasurable and fulfilling as possible. And that's why we're here. So
That's right.
I can't thank you enough. This has been really awesome. I
Thank
hope
you.
everyone has gotten some good value out of this. So thank you, Aliza. It's been great. And I look forward to continuing the conversation, and I'm sure we'll talk again sometime.
Yes, me as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.